The arrival of the human in the classroom on Star Station 8 was quiet like a sealed chamber in space. Alien students of many shapes and colors sat on their floating chairs arranged in a perfect circle. Some had glowing eyes. Some had no mouths at all, but they all turned to look at the door. When it opened, he walked in slowly. His name was Leo. He was the first human ever to be accepted into the Intergalactic Academy. No one expected him to come. Everyone had heard about Deathworlders. They came from planets where every day was a fight to survive. Some aliens called them wild beasts. Others called them brave. But none of the students had ever seen a real human before. Leo looked around with calm eyes. His body was strong. His face showed no fear. He wore the same uniform as the others, but it looked different on him, like it had survived a storm before coming here. He nodded politely and took the empty seat near the back. A few students quickly moved their chairs away from him. Professor Liner entered from the side. He was tall and thin with 4 arms and a face like polished stone. He carried a long data rod and tapped it once on the floor. Silence filled the room completely. "We welcome a new guest today," the professor said. "A student from Earth, a place many of you fear and some of you study. He will be with us for the rest of the cycle. I expect you all to remain professional and focus." Adreka, a soft-voiced student with scales that shimmered blue, leaned over to her friend and whispered, "He does not even have protective skin. How did he survive on a Deathworldalin who came from a water planet and had fins for ears?" Chuckled quietly. "Maybe he tamed the volcanoes." Leo heard them, but said nothing. He kept his eyes on the board as the lecture started. It was about predator psychology and species with hunting instincts. A strange choice for the first lesson of the day. Professor Liner spoke with smooth control. "The Karnax beast is one of the galaxy's most feared predators. It does not hunt for food alone. It hunts. FOR. No creature has ever been able to tame it. Not even the bonding species of Xenobiology. The creature shows high levels of rage and near zero tolerance for control." He showed a short video of the Karnax attacking a drone. Its claws ripped through armor. Its eyes glowed like red suns. Even the strongest aliens shifted in their seats. "Now imagine being in the same room with such a creature," the professor said. "Tomorrow your imagination will become experience." Gasps and mutters filled the air. Rekka shook her head in disbelief. Torv, a 4-eyed student with armored skin, crossed his arms. "This is a mistake," he said out loud. "Why bring students near such a creature?" It is part of the new interactive study plan," the professor replied. "You will not face the Karnax directly. It will remain in a secured chamber. Your task is only to observe and record behavior. All of you will be safe." Leo raised his hand for the first time. The room turned silent again. "Will we be allowed to approach the glass or stay behind the field only?" he asked. "You may stand as close as the safety permits," said the professor. "But you may not interact. The beast is untouchable." Leo nodded once. Nothing more. After class, the students gathered near the exit. Many kept glancing at Leo. Whispers moved through the group like an invisible cloud. "Did you see how calm he was? Maybe he has no fear glands. What if he tries to fight the Karnax?" Rekka stepped forward and faced Leo directly. "Why are you here?" she asked. "Why would a human want to join an alien academy?" Leo looked at her for a second, then replied, "Because there is more to life than surviving. Some of us want to understand the things we were taught to fear." Rekka blinked slowly and moved back without a word. That night, Leo sat alone in the quiet observatory looking at the stars. His mind replayed the professor's words. Karnax beast. Untouchable. No bonding. He had read about it before. On Earth they had creatures like that too. Not the same but similar in spirit. Wild, strong, and full of chaos. But not impossible. He remembered his early days in the mountain forests. The time he stood face to face with a snow predator twice his size. He remembered how it watched him not as prey, but as something unknown. He did not run that day. And the beast did not attack now. Here he was on a space station with the same eyes staring at him from behind glass. Not the beast's eyes yet, but the eyes of every alien in the room. Watching, judging, waiting. Tomorrow would be the test, not of strength, not of power, but of something deeper, understanding and courage. Leo closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "You do not tame a predator with fear, you meet it with calm." Somewhere far below the observation deck, the Karnak shifted in its cage, sensing the change in energy above. The Deathworlder had arrived, and the stars themselves seemed to pause for what would come next. Into the cage, the next morning the academy halls buzzed with whispers. Students walked faster than usual. Some carried recording devices. Others wore extra safety gear, even though they were only observers. The lesson today was not just about study. It was something more. Something that made even the bravest students feel nervous. Leo walked through the hallway like he always did. Calm, steady, and quiet. He wore the same uniform as yesterday. Nothing extra, no armor, no helmet. Just the thin cloth and the badge of the academy on his chest. A few students watched him pass from the corners of the walls. They did not speak, but their eyes said everything. Some were waiting to see him fail. Some were waiting to see something unexpected. No one really knew what a human would do in front of a creature that made even war veterans shake. The training dome was a tall structure with metal walls and crystal glass windows at the top. Inside the center was a sealed chamber built from 5 layers of energy fields. In that chamber was the Karnax, a beast from a world of ash and stone. Muscles like stone slabs, eyes that never blinked, claws that could crush bone in seconds. Professor Leaner stood near the viewing platform. His arms were behind his back. His voice was steady as always. "Today you will observe the predator from a safe distance. Do not attempt communication. Do not try to provoke." The Karnax can sense fear and challenge both. The students formed a circle around the viewing rails. The lights dimmed. A slow humming sound filled the dome as the chamber powered up. In the center, behind the glowing blue walls, the Karnax moved. Its heavy body shifted with slow force. It growled low like thunder far away. Rekka took a step back. Her eyes were wide. "I thought it would be smaller." Olin stared without blinking. "It smells death." He could almost feel the heat through the shield. Torv crossed his arms again. "Still a bad idea," he said. Leo stood in front of the others. He did not speak. His eyes were fixed on the creature. Not with fear, but focus. He was studying its breathing, its movement, the way its claws dug slightly into the ground before it turned. Suddenly, a sharp crack filled the room. A flash of light exploded near the power grid. The energy barrier flickered. For 3 seconds, the outer layer vanished. The Karnax felt it immediately. It roared. A sound so loud that some students fell backward, covering their ears. The beast slammed into the second barrier. The dome shook. Panic broke out. Professor Leiner shouted for the tech crew. "Emergency, hold, activate manual override." But before anyone could move further, Leo stepped forward. He walked to the edge of the second shield without rushing. The light of the barrier reflected off his face. His hands were open at his sides. He did not speak. He did not make sudden moves. The Karnax turned its massive head. Its breath fogged the air. It snarled low but did not attack. Instead, it watched. Students froze. Some pulled out their cameras. Others stood behind safety blocks. No one dared to speak. Leo took 1 step closer. He knelt down slowly, keeping his eyes on the Karnax. His heartbeat was steady. His breath matched the rhythm of the beast. In and out, slow and deep. He raised one hand just enough to show his palm. A gesture of calm, not challenge. The Karnax growled again but did not move forward. It tilted its head to the side, as if trying to understand. Professor Leiner stopped shouting. His voice dropped to a whisper. "What is he doing?" Torv whispered back. "I think he is not afraid." The tech crew managed to restore the barrier. The outer layer came back with a soft buzz. The beast stepped back slightly, its head still facing Leo. Leo stood up without turning his back. He gave one small nod, then walked away from the rail. The dome was silent again. Professor Leaner cleared his throat and looked at the students. That concludes our field lesson. Return to your dormitories immediately. But no one moved. Their eyes were still on Lireka was the first to speak. You were not scared, were you? Leo looked at her. I grew up near mountain wolves, he said. This one breathes the same way. Olin asked. Did you know the barrier would come back in time? No, Leo answered. I just knew. Running would make things worse. Torv stepped forward slowly. His voice was softer now. That was the bravest thing I have ever seen. Leo looked at him and said, I was not trying to be brave. I was trying to understand. Back in his quarters, Professor Leiner watched the security footage again and again. He paused at the moment the Karnak stopped growling. He zoomed in on Leo's eyes. No fear. Only presence. He sat back and made a note. Human student Leo shows advanced instinct behavior. Potential asset for cross-species behavioral studies. Recommend. Observation in the dorm halls. The story spread fast. By nightfall, the entire academy had heard of the Deathworlder who faced a predator without lifting a weapon. Some students now looked at Leo with respect, others with wonder, a few still with fear, but none with doubt. Leo sat near the window in the quiet common room looking out into the stars again. The Karnaks had seen something in him, and tomorrow the others would begin to see it too. The taming begins the next day brought a strange quiet to the academy halls. It was not fear anymore. It was something else. Something hard to name. The students were still unsure about what they had seen. Their minds held questions their mouths could not shape. Leo entered the classroom at the same time as always. His steps were quiet. His face was calm. He greeted no one and sat in the same seat at the back. But this time the seat next to him was not empty. Reka sat beside him with her data tablet close to her chest. Her eyes stayed forward, but her voice was soft. You really felt no fear yesterday, Leo replied. I felt alert, but not afraid. Fear makes you freeze. I had to stay awake in every sense. Professor Leaner entered shortly after and did not wait for the class to settle. Today's topic is the difference between instinct and intelligence. He looked directly at Leo for a moment before turning back to the board. Some creatures act from fear, some from reason. Few can do both at the same time. Few students glanced toward Leo, but no one dared to speak out loud. Later that day, the students were called again to the observation dome. This time it was not for a lesson, it was for something else. The head of behavioral studies had made a request. The Karnak's beast had shown signs of pattern change. Less aggression, less pacing, a strange calm in its movement. The only major variable in the past cycle was the presence of one student. Leo security bots hovered over the dome. Safety fields were at maximum level. The control team stood ready at all times. The plan was simple but strange. Let Leo enter the observation zone. Not the inner cage, but a space much closer than any student had ever been allowed. A space where the beast could see and smell him clearly. When Leo stepped onto the platform, the Karnak stood still. Its red eyes followed his movement, but made no sound. Leo sat down cross-legged, just a few steps from the barrier. He placed his hands on his knees and breathed in a steady rhythm, the same way he did back home in the forest during storms. The Karnak stepped closer. Its heavy feet made the floor vibrate slightly. The control team gripped their monitors. One wrong move and the shields would lock down, but Leo stayed still. He watched the beast, not like an enemy, not like a friend, just as a presence that shared the same space. He spoke softly without moving his head. I know you are not a monster. You only became one when others treated you like one. The Karnak tilted its head again. Its nostrils flared. Then it sat down on its haunches. A low growl came from its chest, but it was not a warning. It was more like a question. The dome fell into silence again. Professor Leiner whispered to his assistant, "This is impossible." Even trained handlers cannot make it sit like that. One of the students recording from behind the glass said, "He is not training it. He is connecting with it." Holland leaned closer to the viewing panel. "This human is not what I expected for over an hour." Leo stayed in the observation zone. He moved slowly. No sudden actions. No loud sounds. Just breathing matching the rhythm of the creature in front of him. At one point, the Karnax walked to the side and brought a small bone it had been chewing earlier. It placed the bone near the edge of the barrier and stepped back. Leo understood it. Was not a gift. It was a gesture, a sign of recognition when the session ended. Leo stood up slowly and gave a slight bow to the creature before walking out. The Karnax remained still watching him until he left the room later. That evening, the Academy's Central Network shared a short clip. No titles, no music. Just Leo sitting face to face with the Karnax. The students across the Academy watched in. Silence in the dining hall. Some aliens began to speak differently. Maybe humans are not just fighters. Maybe they feel things we cannot. Sirika walked over to Leo's table and sat without asking. "You knew exactly what you were doing," she said. "No." Leo replied, "I was just listening without sound." Torv joined them soon. "After I used to think your kind was dangerous, we are," Leo said. "But danger and wisdom are not enemies." Professor Liner called for a private meeting that night. He looked at Leo with serious eyes. "Your presence here was meant to be symbolic. Now it has become something else. You have done what no scientist has done before. The Karnax has shown empathy. Or something close to it," Leo replied. "I did not change the beast. I only showed it that not all walls mean threats." The professor nodded slowly and placed a data chip on the table. "I want you to prepare a presentation. Not for the Academy. For the Council. They will want to hear your experience in your own words." Leo looked down at the chip, then back at the professor. "Why me?" "Because you made a monster sit without a chain outside the windows." The stars burned brighter that night, and deep below in its chamber, the Karnax lay still for the first time in days, as if it too was thinking, breaking old beliefs. News of the event spread faster than light. Across the floating cities and deep space colonies, students and teachers watched the video with silent eyes. A human sitting calmly before a predator known across systems as untamable. No weapons, no armor, no tricks. Just presence. Just stillness. In the days that followed, everything changed for Leo, not in words, not in loud gestures, but in the way others looked at him. Where once there was suspicion, now there was quiet respect. Where there had been distance, now there was cautious curiosity. He still walked the same halls, still sat in the same chair, still ate alone unless someone invited him. But the air around him felt different now. Lighter, less cold. Professor Liner called a special class session. Students from other groups joined. Some had flown in from nearby stations. Others tuned in through holograms. The room was full today. "We will discuss controlled fear," he said, and pointed to the large screen behind him. The screen played the moment again. Leo and the Karnax, side by side, silent, alive. "What you see here is not command," the professor explained. "It is not training. It is not a trick. It is a meeting of instincts under control. One driven by nature, the other by understanding." Greca raised her hand. "Is it possible that the Karnax saw something in Leo that we cannot?" Professor Linor nodded. "Some believe predators see more than what is outside. They smell history. They feel intention." Olin leaned forward. "But how does a human from a death world do something even trained handlers failed to do?" Leo spoke from the back. "You survive long enough on a world like Earth, you learn to feel before you think. The ground speaks before a storm. The silence warns you before a beast appears. I grew up knowing when to run and when to stop running." Another student asked, "Did you ever feel like it would attack you?" Leo paused. "No, but I was ready if it did. I did not want control. I wanted peace. Sometimes peace is what disarms the wild." The discussion grew deeper. No one interrupted. No one laughed. Even Torv, the one who once doubted Leo most, now listened with care after class students stayed behind. Some asked questions about Earth. Others wanted to know how Leo learned such things. He told them about the forests, the rivers, the quiet nights. Where danger moved in the dark without sound, he did not call Earth home with pride or pain. He called it a teacher Professor Leaner watched from a distance. His mind was full. He had studied hundreds of species-written papers spoken at conferences, but he had never seen something like this. A moment that forced minds to shift without force. He returned to his lab and opened old reports about deathworlders. Most of them spoke of violence, risk, unpredictability. But none spoke of balance. None spoke of connection. He added a new entry: Deathworld subject Leo displays advanced empathy under high-stress conditions. Ability to synchronize with non-communicative lifeforms through presence alone. Recommend long-term study. That night Leo received a message from the High Council. A formal request for a live session, not just a talk. A demonstration he accepted without hesitation. The dome was prepared again. This time larger observers, leaders, scientists, peacekeepers. They came. Not to test but to witness. The Karnax was already awake when Leo entered. It stood tall, breathing slowly. Its claws scraped the floor, but its body showed no signs of attack. Leo stood near the edge of the barrier and removed the energy shield controls. Not completely. Just enough to step inside the outer circle. Gasps filled the room. Security bots floated higher. Fingers hovered near emergency buttons. Leo walked slowly to the center. The Karnax moved to match him, step by step. No growl. No roar. Just the heavy sound of breath and trust. They stood inches apart. Then Leo did something no one expected. He turned his back to the beast and sat down. The Karnax circled him once, then lay down beside him. Its tail wrapped slightly to the side. Its body relaxed. The room was frozen. Not a single word spoken. Leo looked up toward the crowd. Some fear teaches you to run. Some fear teaches you to listen. We come from a world that teaches both. Every day after the session, council members approached him. Some asked questions. Some just stared. One elder said, "Your kind may have sharp teeth, but your wisdom is sharper." Another whispered, "You did not break the beast. You invited it to rest." Back at the academy, students welcomed him differently. They asked him to join group studies, to share his ways. They no longer called him the Deathworlder with fear. Now they said it with something close to honor. Reka smiled when she saw him. "That creature listens to you." Leo smiled back. "Maybe because I did not ask it." Torv nodded beside them. "And now the rest of us are learning to listen too." Even Professor Leiner invited him to co-teach a lesson on instinct and control. Leo stood beside the old alien without pride, without fear. He spoke with the same calm as he had shown the Karnak students. Leaned forward, hungry to learn. Not about humans, but about a way of seeing the universe they had never been shown before. That night, Leo stood once again by the observatory window. Stars moved slowly beyond the glass. In the distance he could see his home world, a small blue dot between light and shadow. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew. This much understanding was louder than fear, and sometimes the wildest. Things listened best to the ones who did not try to tame them. The final lesson morning came with silver light falling across the glass walls of the academy. A gentle breeze passed through the vents, carrying soft sounds from the outer gardens. Today was not a normal day. Today was the last day of this learning cycle. A final session was planned. Not by the academy, not by the council. It was requested by the students themselves. They wanted Leo to speak. The great lecture hall had never been this full. Students from every floor, every wing, and every section came. Even teachers who usually stayed in labs or research rooms arrived quietly and took their seats. No one wore formal dress. No one gave long introductions. They waited. Leo stood at the front without stage lights, without notes. He placed one hand on the table in front of him and looked around. "I was not sent here to change anything," he said. "I came to learn." He walked slowly across the room, speaking with a voice that felt calm and steady. My home world teaches through pressure. It teaches through danger. But it also teaches through silence, through waiting, through listening. He looked at the rows of faces, each one different, each one curious. You all know me now as the one who sat with the Karnaks, the one who faced a predator without fear. But I was afraid many times, not of the beast, but of not being understood. Olin raised his hand. What made the beast trust you? Leo answered, I never asked it to trust me. I let it ditch it. Eureka asked, what if it had attacked? Then I would have done what I could to stay alive, Leo replied. But I knew something deep inside, that it had never been seen as anything but a threat. I wanted to be the first to see it as more than that. Professor Liner stepped forward from the side of the hall and asked, and what did you see? And I saw a creature carrying weight, Leo replied, not just the weight of muscle or instinct, but the weight of how others saw it. Sometimes the way we look at someone becomes a cage stronger than walls. There was silence after that. A long quiet moment where no one moved. Leo reached into his pack and pulled out a small item, a smooth stone carved with simple lines. He placed it on the table. This is from Earth, carved by wind, not tools, shaped by time, not hands. It reminds me that strength does not always mean force. Sometimes it means patience. Storv stood up near the middle row and said, you changed my view of humans. Leo replied, I did not come here to change views. I came here to sit quietly long enough for you to see what I really am. Professor Liner nodded slowly and said, then perhaps that is the lesson we all needed. After the talk, a small ceremony was held in the garden. The Karnaks could not be brought outside, but a hologram stood in its place. It showed the moment when the beast and the human had sat side by side. The students voted to make it part of the Academy's Hall of Memory. As the sun moved across the sky, many students came to Leo. Some shook his hand. Some bowed in their own traditions. Some just stood near him in silence. He accepted all of it without pride, without distance. Later in the evening, Leo returned to the observation dome. The Karnaks was awake, watching him from behind the final barrier. He stepped close. You are still here, he said, and so am I. If beast made no sound, but lowered its head. Professor Liner watched from the control deck and turned to the assistant. Make a note. The subject shows continued signs of connection. We may be looking at the start of something new, the assistant asked. What do we call it? Liner smiled. Call it the Leo effect. The next day, Leo prepared for his journey home. The cycle was complete. The program finished. His time at the Academy had come to an end, but he left behind more than notes and test scores. He left a story, a story told in every classroom, every study group, every shared message, a story about the human who sat with the wild and made it rest as the ship pulled away from the station. Many stood by the windows watching it disappear into the stars. Rekka held the stone he had given her, feeling its smooth surface against her palm. Turv wrote a message on the Academy board. Strength can be loud, but the strongest are often the quiet ones. Olin painted a picture of the Karnaks, not as a monster, but as a creature with eyes that held thought. Professor Liner updated the Academy's main curriculum. New subject added: interspecies empathy field study case, human Leo and Karnaks protocol 1. Somewhere deep in the observation dome, the Karnaks moved in its chamber. It let out a low breath, then lay down in the corner where Leo used to stand. Not all cages are made of walls, and not all beasts are waiting to attack. Some are waiting to be seen, and some humans know how to look. Story had ended, but the lesson had just begun. The end.